Hypervigilance. Hello, this is Shores of Infinity with another video about enlightenment and spirituality. This time about hypervigilance. Why am I talking about hypervigilance? Because it's very common in spiritual people. Why is it very common in spiritual people? Because usually hypervigilance is a symptom for... But before I forget, this channel has reached 1,500 subscribers. Thank you very much. Thank you very much to all Patreons also, and for joining me as a Patreon, for liking and subscribing. Don't forget to like and subscribe. If you like the video, it's much more likely that other people can find it as well. Also, there's a new country that joined the list of countries watching this channel, Slovenia. Welcome, Slovenia. And it's really cool. Right now it's the number 2 in watch time after the United States of America. So back to the topic. Hypervigilance is usually a symptom of post-traumatic stress syndrome, chronic stress, complex PTSD, or caretaker / codependent / savior / helper syndrome. In my experience, many people who are interested in the spiritual path or any spiritual path either have suffered to some degree from complex PTSD or from caretaker / codependency. What is hypervigilance? Vigilant is to be very awake. Hypervigilant is to be very, very awake. You're constantly aware of your surroundings and aware of potential dangers. There's an automatic scanning going on if there is a potential danger, a potential perpetrator, a potential threat, a potential attacker, a potential fight. You enter a room and immediately, within a few seconds, you know this could be dangerous, or this and that person could be dangerous. Yeah, we know this from spy movies and so on, but actually spies get trained to do that, but many people do that automatically, and it may feel totally normal to you. You probably won't notice it because you have been doing it almost your entire life. It usually starts in childhood, not necessarily so, depending what the cause of the trauma was. Could have been an accident, any kind of really extreme moment in your life where your instincts thought you're going to die. I'm going to die now. And probably this has happened more than once, so your instinct system has decided to do the scanning permanently. The upside of this is that you're probably a very good judge of character. The downside is that you probably can't turn it off. It's an automatism. It's going on if you want it or not. Another reason why you could have this is that you had ADHS or ADS, attention deficit syndrome, as a child, which is the wrong word. It's not attention deficit, it's actually too much attention, but it's an attention dysregulation. So it depends where the attention is projected towards. So hypervigilance is also a form of hyperactivity, and it's exhausting. The purpose of this kind of scanning is self-defense, of course. If it's an instinctive fear that can protect you. It tells you when you are in a dangerous situation. If this gets dysregulated and you're hypervigilant all the time, then a part of you thinks that it's dangerous for you all the time. that you're under threat all the time. So then, of course, you're also flooded with cortisol and adrenaline and so on all the time. It's bad for your immune system, it's bad for your sleep, it's bad for meditation, inner peace, and so on. So your instincts, they have misunderstood something here. They have projected some instances of fear of annihilation onto the world and onto the life in general. So you might think, for example, that you're very empathic or not very empathic, and for both of these reasons this hypervigilance can be the cause. People who are very empathic, they can feel the emotions of others, which is of course a defense mechanism, or can be. On the other hand, people who think they're not very emotional or not very empathic can actually be very, very empathic, but they kind of blot it out most of the time because it's too much otherwise. They would perceive too much. It's too overwhelming, so they pretend they're not. But unconsciously, below the surface, the scanning is going on all the time. So, now the question is, of course, how to turn this off. The first thing is to realize that this is going on. And if you have seen this in yourself, with or without help, you might need help because it's so natural to you by now. But once you know it's going on, the question is how to turn it off, because it's too much. You don't need it all the time, or at least you need a switch that you can turn it off when you're sure you don't need it, at home, for example. There are several possibilities. One is to lose the fear of death, because that is what the program is afraid of death. I have made some videos about it, how to lose the fear of death and how to see that death is actually a very good guide. Another thing that helps some people to lose the fear of death are some substances which can show you that death is actually not the end and nothing to be afraid of. The next thing is, if you go outside and meet people who you do not know, or if you are in situations with many people that are not predictable, then watch yourself very carefully what's going on. So you have to become more aware of these automatic processes and to find the point where you actually would like to leave or run away if you had the chance. And sometimes you do have the chance. So there's usually a point where you get very some people get upset or angry or nervous or have sweaty hands or whatever, and this is usually a sign that the body wants to go, doesn't want to be there anymore, it becomes too much. Try to find the point when this starts, not when it's too late already, when you're already in full flight and fight and freeze response. Try to find when it starts. Thirdly, of course, if possible, try to avoid these situations initially, because the fourth point is you can practice, but don't practice in extreme circumstances. Practice in easy situations. And then you can teach your overstrained nervous system that you're actually not under threat, that you're actually not in a mortally dangerous situation. At work, for example, if you're working in a big room, a big office with many people, then this would go off automatically. And then you have to teach yourself that this is not a dangerous situation. Then, of course, not to beat a dead horse here, I'm saying it again and again, but trauma therapy is very important. And you can also do some energetical stuff like theta healing or mind flow and so on. What many people do automatically is they learn a martial art. This can help to some degree, but it can also make it worse, because in martial arts you also train how to feel when someone is coming too close and so on. In any case, lastly, there are more possibilities and more techniques, but the last one I want to talk about here and now and today is to practice setting boundaries. One of the things that usually is causal to the whole thing is that at some point your boundaries have not been respected. So you've probably not learned optimally how to set boundaries. So you have to set boundaries and also respect boundaries. This is where it's going into the direction of codependency and caretaking, because this is a boundary-less world. If you're the caretaker, there are no boundaries. You're responsible for everyone. Part of learning how to set and respect boundaries is that you realize that you're only responsible for yourself, for no one else. Of course, it's a bit more tricky with your own children, but also here, this can be improved. An easy exercise to learn this is to say no more often. But no matter in which circumstance, you just, first reaction, always say no first. You can retract this later, but first say no for two reasons. Firstly, to practice it, and secondly, to avoid to get into overdrive, feeling overwhelmed. And feeling overwhelmed is also one of the things that many people on the spiritual path feel a lot. Also, one of the symptoms of hypervigilance can be that you feel like an alien, that you feel you don't belong, you're not like the others. This is a secondary mechanism. It's a mechanism of isolation because it's too much otherwise. So because the first mechanism doesn't work properly, because you're in this hypervigilant state of potential danger all the time, the only possibility that you leave for the system, for the instincts, is to isolate yourself, and then you feel isolated. But you have created it yourself because you're actually in this constant state of self-defense. If you have questions, you can write me a mail, you can reach me on email or on Patreon. Thank you for joining me on Patreon. Thank you to all my Patreons. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And see you soon.